Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and journey throughout the world of martial arts and other stuff they're involved in. My guest today has been studying Capoeira for over 20 years. In her youth, she enjoyed gymnastics and other sports, and in college earned a BA in music, teaching math and music subjects in public and private schools for over 10 years. She's run 2 successful martial arts schools, adjudicated in the first ICAPF tournament in Los Angeles in 2012, and competed and won first place in both co-ed solo and partner divisions in the Intermountain West ICAPF tournament in 2016, and performed numerous exhibitions for Capoeira. She has studied Capoeira in Brazil, taught workshops across the USA, and partnered with state programs to bring Capoeira to schools in the Intermountain West. She's a co-host of the Only the Strongest podcast. Outside of Capoeira, she enjoys tricking, music writing, spending time with family, and video games. Please welcome my guest today, Celeste Myers. How you doing today?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you. I know we've been trying to schedule this for a while, so I'm glad we're finally making it happen.
Yeah.
What I like to do with all my guests, I know we said you've been studying about 20 years. I want to go back to the beginning. I want to know how it started, where that first interest came from, that first spark that kicked off your martial arts journey.
All right. Full disclosure, I thought martial arts were super nerdy. Of course. So in high school, there was like a capoeira performance at a talent show when I was like a junior in high school. And a really good friend of mine who was a drummer, I was a band geek. See, the irony begins. I was a drummer, and one of my drummer friends was like, dude, that was so cool, and tried to copy capoeira. And that was like our little inside joke for years, half mocking, half admiring, what we had seen that day. Well, 2 years later, my freshman year of college, I'm studying for music, and it's like club week. And I see this video of capoeira. I didn't know what it was, but there were people doing flips in it. And I was like, man, I used to do flips as a kid. I did gymnastics till I was like 9. Mm-hmm. And then it hadn't since really. And so I just kind of got curious. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what my friend was into. Oh, it's going to be so funny if I go to this for one time and tell him about it. Well, so I did that. I went one night to the club and was absolutely hooked. Like, I learned one move, but they had conga drums there. And I was like, I'm a drummer. Like, what is this? How have I never heard of this thing? And it just was like all the things I never knew I loved and needed in my life in like one setting. And just from then on, it took over my life. I dropped out of college 2 years later to just pursue more capoeira, training every day, teaching throughout the week. I went back and finished my BA like 3 years after that, but I took like a capoeira sabbatical for a few years. So yeah, that's how I got started.
What was it about it? What made you, you said you were hooked the first night. What are some of the things you remember just that first class, some feelings you had, and what made you just want to go all in?
Dude, I just love being counterculture and niche. And it was just so otherworldly to me, so different from anything I had like seen or experienced. And I'm also like, I was kind of a tomboy growing up. And so like the aggressive, playful, like this is kind of martial arts, kind of, I don't know what we're doing, but we're throwing kicks at each other's heads and this is intense and I kind of like it. Like just kind of pulled me in and I don't know. And then on top of it, there was music involved and it was in another language. And so I was like, this is a whole other world that I'm so curious about and want to explore. So I really think the music had a lot to do with it. Seeing some acrobatics that I had seen in my youth and was like, oh, people still do this as adults, like you still backflip in your 20s or whatever. And it was just the possibilities of like what kind of a life that was so different. And the movements were just so unique. I actually learned Mea Lua, which is like the capoeira kick, right? Mm-hmm. It's like the only one kind of authentic to capoeira that if you're a good capoeirista, you have a good Mea Lua. And that's kind of how you can tell that in their ginga, how long they've been training.
Okay.
But that was the first kick. That's all I learned in that 1 hour class. And it was just so cool, just to go upside down and throw my foot at somebody. And was like, this is amazing. So,
and what was it about that instructor?
dude, he was chill and funny, very laid back. And I feel like that's a culture, every instructor is different. And maybe this is the same in a lot of martial arts schools, but a lot of the Intermountain West like instructors that I've found are very lighthearted, a little bit of like, we don't take ourselves very seriously, but also we try our damnedest to be like really good at what we're doing. But, so there's that kind of dichotomy. So it's like, oh, I can laugh about this too. Because here I am thinking, this thing is nerdy. Martial arts are silly. But here I am loving it and seeing people that come from all walks of life also love this same thing. It was just really unique.
So when you took that Capoeira sabbatical, how often were you training?
About 5 days a week.
Nice.
2 to 3 hours a day, I would say.
Wow.
For a stint of it, for a few years, I would double up. So I was training 5 days a week. I would be teaching as well. And then some days before the 2-hour class that we would go train, we would also go an hour and a half before that to a gymnastics gym to go work on our acrobatics and flips.
Okay.
So we'd be going and flipping for an hour and a half, and then we'd go to Capoeira class for 2 hours.
So how long were you into Capoeira before you attempted your first flip since gymnastics as a kid?
Probably 4 years.
Oh, it took you a while. Okay.
It did. Yeah. Like I mean, aerials, that kind of thing were less scary and I would try those, but really deciding I wanted to get better and get back to back handsprings, back flips, like explore those kinds of flips and learn V twists and all that kind of stuff. It took me like 4 or 5 years in where I thought maybe I can actually do those things too, and start going for it.
See, and that's what kept me away from it. I always wanted to learn it, but with my bad knee, I'm like, I could never do any kind of flip. I would land wrong and I'd be done because of my knee.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm now 40 and feel brittle for sure. So when I go flipping, it's like I take very calculated risks if I do. So
Nice.
you gotta play it safe these days. But when you're 20s, you think you're invincible and you just have all the energy on top of a 5 hour. I mean, what are you gonna do?
That is
You
true.
can go chuck your body off of whatever 5 times.
So we mentioned competition in the intro. First of all, talk a little bit what drew you into the competition side of it, and also just talk a little bit about, you're the first capoeira instructor I've had on my show. Talk a little bit about what is involved in a competition for capoeira also.
Yeah. So I almost want to back up because you're saying that. Like, I am so grateful and happy that capoeira is getting a tiny spotlight in the martial art world, because I feel like it is the butt of every martial artist joke. You know what I mean? Like, nobody takes capoeira seriously. Nobody even mentions it as like an option for what to train and why you would even want to. I think especially because the culture of martial arts have gone so much towards UFC and what's the most functional, which, for defending myself in a street fight, and this is a totally different subject, I apologize. But to me, I'm like, dude, just get a gun. Like, what? There's no point in any martial arts at this point. Like, everybody has guns now, so I don't know.
See, my outlook on that, though, is that, every time someone brings that up, it's like every fight goes to the ground. It's like, first of all, no, they don't. But second of all, it's not like if you get in a random street fight and someone attacks you, they're not going to be a trained martial artist. Literally any martial art, is going to probably save your life.
Yeah, I agree. And so that's where I'm saying capoeira has a lot more martial art core and technique that I feel like I've seen. Competitions are a little bit controversial in capoeira. Everybody does them. There's no like one. I did ICAPF competitions, but there's Bombas. There's other organizations throughout the world that hold different capoeira competitions.
Okay.
And it's hard because I feel like it takes out so much of what is capoeira, which is the culture, the history, kind of the soul, the music, all of that. That part of capoeira is not in the competition. The competition is only your movements. So most capoeiristas don't like the competitions because they feel like it's not true to capoeira in the first place.
Okay.
And so they've almost Americanized it in a way and made it something it's not necessarily. That being said, the competitions I participated in, I adjudicated the first time that they held them in the US, the ICAPF in Los Angeles, because I was a graduate at that point, a graduada in capoeira, and they were only letting students participate in the first competition. So anybody that was an instructor cord and up didn't get to participate. They then later opened that up. And that's when I competed in 2016. And they did divisions not by gender, but by weight.
Oh, okay.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
So is it almost like a form type competition, or?
So it's basically like a light sparring. So there were 2 types. The solo competition is you're playing capoeira against your partner or with them, however you want to think of it. And then it's points. So you get a point for contact with any straight kick. If you did a takedown and executed it cleanly without them countering it, it was 2 points. Any kind of show or inference of a move sometimes gets a point, just kind of depending on how clean it was. And, so if you're marking a sweep instead of taking one, you might get a point. Okay. But if you take it, you're going to get 2 points.
That's cool. Yeah, I honestly didn't even realize there was competition for capoeira. So I just learned something new.
A lot of people don't realize there's contact in capoeira.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, if you want to do it's not a martial art because they don't make contact. It's like, this was a street sport. Like, we don't use pads, but the contact is there. Yeah. And often, and when we train, and especially at the higher levels, when you're doing takedowns, you're doing contact kicks and controlling them and learning how. I was fortunate enough that my first capoeira school where I learned was sharing a taekwondo gym. Oh. And so they had a bunch of standing kicking bags. So I got to really train strength behind my kicks, which not all capoeira schools have that. Mm-hmm. And I think it makes a huge difference to be able to actually kick bags and then understand how much you can put into a kick when you go and do that to your partner. So you know what 10% is because you've tried to put 100% into a bag.
Nice. Yeah, I know when I a little off topic too, but when I studied Aikido when I was in college, when the instructor found out that I had a background in Shotokan, Tungsudo, and Taekwondo, he's like, oh, so you know how to really kick, so we can use you, so we can show you how to really defend against kicks. I'm like, yeah, fine, show me. So yeah, it's same type thing. It's like if they wouldn't have had that student, they would have, he's like, he admitted, he's like, I don't know how to throw a kick. So,
yeah, exactly.
That is cool. Nice. And then you also mentioned teaching. Now, what led you down that path? I mean, obviously you went to school for that also. Is that kind of why you decided to also teach in capoeira, or was that a different reason?
No. So teaching just kind of fell into my lap of, I'm doing music. This is going to be, I thought about doing performance. I needed to get a job right after I graduated, and there's always teaching positions, so I was like, oh, I'll go do that. So I got my license, and I just taught in school, and kind of pursued. That's what I thought I always wanted with my life. But meanwhile, I was also starting to pursue capoeira. And that's kind of what won out over the years. I stopped teaching back in 2018 was my last year as a public school teacher. And I went into another job for a little while, into property management, actually, and then had 2 kids. And so I taught until they were maybe 2 and 1. They're now 4 and 3. Okay. And I had to quit. They are both autistic and just need a lot of help in these early years. Mm-hmm. So luckily my husband's able to financially support us. So I've been able to stop and kind of focus all my time on my kiddos outside of going and teaching at our studio.
Cool.
Studio wise, this happens all the time in capoeira. It's like the last student standing. And I don't know how many martial arts are like this. Last student standing takes over the dojo kind of a feel. Like I got it turned over when my teachers were like, hey, we have to move. And rather than close down the school, you're one of our top students. Do you want to take it over? And I was only like 4 years into capoeira training, but that is so typical for capoeira because it's such a small niche martial art that not a lot of people know in the first place, that something is better than nothing is the vibe, or has been for, the last 10 or 20 years in a lot of places in America. So I had taken it over and sought out another capoeira mestre where I continued my tutelage, if you will. Okay. So I was teaching at my studio and then would train on the off nights at their studio and continue to get better that way so that I was still progressing myself.
So think back to the first time you taught capoeira to now. What do you think has changed about your teaching style over the years?
I've loosened up as I've aged. I used to be that, like that a little bit insecure of a teacher, have to prove yourself, especially as a small woman, and feeling like I have to be the total drill sergeant, push everybody to their breaking points, be hard ass, put your money where your mouth is, and some of that's fun to be like that. But as I've grown older, I've developed a natural confidence in like understanding who I am and what I'm doing and not needing that anymore to be able to run a efficient and good class, and making sure that my studio is a place that people can now come to connect, especially in this day and age where it's so hard for people to find community and connection and friends anymore. I find that, outside of pushing my students to their physical limits, just giving them a place to come together is really what's needed these days.
Nice. Another question that I don't know the answer to is, how does ranking work in capoeira?
So every school has their own ranking system. There's no unification. Back in the late 60s in Brazil, they had this huge convention, brought all the prominent mestres of the day together to try to organize it, just, to actually make a national or an international idea between all the groups, and came out of that with nothing. They couldn't agree on anything. So everybody just kept doing their own way. So every school follows some belt system. The similarities are that everybody ends up with the white belt. So mestre, the highest belt you can get, across the board is kind of agreed on. You need at least 25 years or more of training to become a master in capoeira, and the belt will be white.
Really?
Okay. Yeah.
Definitely different than other martial arts.
Yeah. Most rankings will go kind of with the Brazilian flag and colors, maybe start green or yellow, go to blue, which is more rare in the flag and a rare color. So your instructors will often have blue or cords, and then end up with white. So,
okay. And what is walk us through a test? What is a test like, at least maybe at your school or ones that you've been through?
Yeah, I can only, attest to the ones I've done and like taken myself at schools or done at my own school. For my school, it's pretty rigorous. They have to be able to display, we have a list of movements. So their testing is every 6 months in capoeira to start. We'll do what's called a batizado, and that's like their testing event, their baptism, where they become a capoeirista. They'll have movements, so kicks, dodges, takedowns, appropriate for whatever level they're on. Each one, I would put maybe 10 to 20 movements that they should know for that chord rank. And then on top of that, I add music. So they need to be able to play a certain instrument. They need to be able to sing a certain number of songs in Portuguese. Wow. They need to know some history about capoeira. So if I ask them, who was Mestre Bimba? What did he do for capoeira? Who was Zumbi? Who are these, these figures, these prominent figures in capoeira and Brazil? Because it's incredibly important. Like capoeira is a living martial art still. Like it's very much an oral history that continues to be changed and passed on. So it's not something that's been solidified. It's constantly evolving, a lot of creativity added into it, but super important that it maintains its roots and the understanding of why it is the way it is, why it's not just a straight up sparring, why there's a community feel, why there's music, why there's all this, because of the situation it came from, because it was born of the slavery and oppression that these Africans went through in Brazil, and that this was their way of maintaining some semblance of freedom of thought, expression, even actually trying to fight for their lives, and that just becomes part of also what you get tested on, and knowing and understanding that portion of capoeira as well.
That's cool. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's, I was wondering if that story, if, the little bit I've known from my own research, if that was true, that it was from, the slaves hiding the moves in music and dance so they could still get away with training, in front of their captors and stuff. And
yeah. And
cool.
Some of it may be, part folklore. Some of it may be true. These are like, everything's kind of oral history passed down for the last 500 years. Ever since Portuguese slave trade. And that's where a lot of the songs, that's why it's important to learn Portuguese. A lot of the songs reflect stories of the past, becoming free from that. But some of the songs are also very just silly and in the moment, making fun of whoever just went in the roda and got kicked by a 5-year-old and taken down, or like, something very prevalent to like going on right then. And if you don't know Portuguese, you're missing the joke. Or you're missing the directive of like, hey, this mestre started singing this song about this tree falling. And that might be this warning, like, hey, watch out, this guy's coming for you. And you're probably going to get taken down if you're not careful when you play him right now.
And you mentioned in the testing and stuff, having to, sing songs and play instruments. I was actually going to ask you that before you brought that up, is that I'm assuming then is like learning to play like the berimbau and other instruments are required. And you kind of answered that. So is there certain ones that they have to, is there one, you just pick some random ones, or how is it, do they know, ahead of time, like for your test in 6 months, you're going to have to do like these 3 songs and this, or, how strict is that?
Yeah, that's up to every teacher. I lay it out pretty obviously, like, hey, on your next test, you need to be able to play the pandero, like the tambourine instrument, and sing a song while playing it. Any of the songs, every month, our school focuses on one new song. Okay. And usually, shorter, easier, smaller songs that are maybe only 3 lines in Portuguese, so it's easier to memorize. But every time we play capoeira, or what looks like light sparring to every other martial artist, there's music involved. So you're constantly around those songs. So you get to know them a little bit, just by being around it and being involved and singing the choruses back. And that's a part that kind of a lot of people, I think, get held up. Me as a musician, I'm not a singer, I'm a drummer. And for my first 3 years of capoeira, I sang in a whisper. Like I was super shy and embarrassed to sing and was just like not sure. And then at some point I was like, this is dumb. We're all like kids at a schoolyard and I'm just going to sing, yell my songs or whatever. And I'm going to cheer these people. I like, if I see something super awesome, I'm going to say it. And that's another part that's like really fun because it's a little bit of like a live fight. It's not quiet and intense. Like rodas should be lively and exciting. And if you see something awesome, you should say that, you should be able to say, boy, like, say these things in Portuguese that are cheering people on, that you see them trying their best or throwing some awesome new trick or they got a really clean takedown, and it's just fun to be able to express that and it gets that kind of community vibe going. Yeah. So
I got to ask then, are the songs from Only the Strong, are they authentic?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
For sure. They are. And those are still sung. It's so funny you bring that up. That's everybody. So many people have found capoeira because of that movie.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, first time I watched it, I was like, really this? Because it's like such an old school style of capoeira. But now it's just beautiful. We have our students watch it all the time. But yeah, all the songs are very popular. Paranauê and Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. Like those are classics in capoeira that you hear.
I remember, God, it was probably my nephew. So let's see, he was born in 90. So it would have been like probably around like early 2000s, like 2000. He was probably less than 2. So like 2000, 2001. I was at my sister's house and my little nephew started singing Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. I'm like, Tyler has seen Only the Strong? And my sister's like, what?
Or a bunch of Mazda commercials.
I know, that's the thing. She's like, no, he loves the car commercial. I'm like, what car commercial? I hadn't seen it yet. And I heard that. Now every time I see that, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. Mm-hmm. That's hilarious. Yep. And it was funny when people, and I always jokingly, and who knows, maybe you've never seen this one, but when people bring up, oh yeah, the capoeira movie, and I always jokingly throw out the movie Rooftops with Jason Gedrick. Have you seen that one?
Rooftops?
Yeah.
No.
That's actually, to my knowledge, the first movie that actually featured capoeira.
Well, now I have to go look this up.
It's bad.
I thought you were going to see The Assailant.
No.
Because like, oh, yeah, that's the other capoeira movie that came out.
No, I think it was, I want to say 80. He starred in the movie Iron Eagle, and it came out a few years after Iron Eagle. But it was called Rooftops. I don't even remember if they called it capoeira in the movie. They might have just called it combat dancing. I think you can watch the movie free on Tubi. So you'll have to check it out and see how bad it is.
I'm going to for sure.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome.
It's an 80s movie, but it's not a great 80s movie.
As all martial arts movies were.
Yeah,
80s movies.
Yeah,
classics.
There were some great ones. I mean, I literally just watched Only the Strong 3 nights ago.
Nice.
I tell people I have a handful of movies that I watch once a year at least. Yeah. And for martial arts movies, it's that one. It's Karate Kid. It's Best of the Best, and it's Perfect Weapon. Those 4 I watch at least once a year, all the time. And then they're throwing like some movies like War Games and Last Starfighter and Star Wars and things like that. But for martial arts movies, those 4. And actually 3 of those I watched in the last week. So
you didn't throw a Bloodsport in there. I feel like my 2 favorites have to be Ombak or Ip Man.
Nice. I do like Bloodsport, but I don't know if I watch it.
As like a classic.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I watch it once a year, but I definitely watch it. I know I've probably watched it in the last 2 years for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I do enjoy it. But speaking of Only the Strong, definitely got to ask, how did the podcast come about? Obviously, I kind of know where you got the name, but kind of take us through the history of the podcast and how it started and just talk a little bit about it.
So it really was back in, I think 2018 is when we started. It was kind of this little pack of 4 of us friends. It was me and 3 guys that were all really good friends. I ended up marrying one of them, and the other 2 had just been our friends forever in capoeira. And we kind of had all moved away from each other, gone to LA and Montana and back east. And it was kind of just our way to still kind of talk weekly, kind of keep up with each other. And capoeira was like just the easy topic. Like we could talk about that for hours every week, no problem. So we did that just to kind of stay connected to each other. And the format was so, I mean, Only the Strongest. It's already a play on, the movie and everything else. And it's just the layman's capoeira. Like, how do you deal with stinky feet and stains on your uniform? How do you deal with this idiot that like is just being this way every time I want to train with him? How do I get this move better? Like just silly everyday martial arts style conversations. So yeah, we kept that going for a while. We're on a small hiatus currently. We have like 170 or so episodes in total. We just did weekly and then went to bi-weekly. We took one hiatus in 2020, the end of 2020 to 2021. And then we're on a short break right now as well. So we just take small breaks here and there as our lives need before you.
And like, how far out do you plan? Do you put a lot of thought into like what we're going to do for the next episode, or you just kind of hit record and wing it?
A little both.
Okay.
We know each other well enough that it's easy to hit record and wing it, but we'll usually lay out subjects. So we'd sit and brainstorm like, hey, what are these things? Or we would go to an event and be like, man, I saw this thing. It drove me nuts. I hate when other teachers do this, this, and that when they're teaching workshops. Let's talk about it. Or man, I saw this amazing movie in Capoeira, or I read this book and I really want to review it and let's talk about that, or, whatever
cool. It's kind of
comes up.
Yeah. I've listened to, when we talk about the interview, I listened to a couple episodes, and I'm trying to scroll through. Did you guys ever bring in guests on there, or is it just you guys doing it?
We did bring guests a couple times. Okay. There were already enough of us. We didn't feel like we needed to for a while.
Yeah.
And it really is maybe the only podcast for Capoeira that is not serious in tone and nature. Most others that you find take themselves very seriously and are very studious about talking about the history or interviewing one-on-one guests or that kind of thing. And ours is, making jokes about training.
Nice.
So that's kind of the difference there. But we would kind of think ahead before we would record, have ideas.
And is it audio only, or do you guys do video too?
It's audio only.
Nice.
Video killed the radio star.
That's right. I would agree. Yeah, so. I have no interest in doing video. I've had a lot of guests tell me I should. I mean, I have a YouTube channel, but it just has my logo on there and you can hear the show.
Yeah, and same. So, I mean, I've got videos of my Capoeira over the years on a YouTube, and we had talked about maybe doing videos, but it's like, that's extra effort on our part that I don't want to put in. None of us really did. Mm-hmm. But most podcasts have gone that route, and it makes sense, especially for YouTube audiences, to see the people talking.
Yeah, but it's also funny because if you look at some of the research, it's like, even though most are going to video, the research says most people still just listen. Even if they have it on the video, they're not watching, they're just listening. So it's like, does it really
worth
matter?
The effort?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. People are like, oh, it's got to have video. I'm like, well, how often when you're listening to a podcast, how often do you watch it? Oh, never. I just play in the background. So then why do you care if it has video?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I get it. I get both sides of it, but like I said, I'm an audio guy. I'm going to stick with audio. So cool.
It's fair.
So did you like at least on one episode, did you review Only the Strong at least?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd have to look back what episode that is, but
I'll have to go
we
back
reviewed that movie. We reviewed most Capoeira movies, most Capoeira books. Definitely reviewed Only the Strong.
Nice.
It is over the years, I have accepted it as this is a pretty classic representation of showing up at a Capoeira class. And it looked, I mean, did I not just explain how I thought it was nerdy and then I became obsessed with it, just like any movie trope 101?
Of course.
Case in point. So it's a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
It's a real feel-good 90s flick.
So how do you think Mark's skills were in the movie?
He wasn't bad, especially looking at it now. Mm-hmm. With the short amount of training, I'm sure he actually just went back this summer. He keeps joking with Mestre Main. They're going to make a number 2. For years they were talking about that being in the works, Only the Stronger version 2. He just went to Mestre Main's Bachizado this summer, and some people got to kind of see Mark Dacascos there and, talk to him or get a signature or something. So it's always fun to see him pop back up into the community.
That's cool.
And see him really appreciate Capoeira, because he didn't have to, he does a lot of things, and for him to maintain that connection is really awesome.
Yeah, I interviewed his dad earlier this year, and he told me some funny stories about Mark, and I'm going to be interviewing Mark soon. It's just he's very, 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 very busy. Hopefully before the end of this year, I got to reach out to him in, I think, October and see how his schedule looks. He'll be fun to chat with. He's been in a lot of, that was the first one I saw him in, but obviously he's been in a lot of great movies and TV shows, and just super, super nice guy. So that'll be,
exactly.
That'll be cool. Do you know, from the movie, how many of the students actually was there any of them that had any Capoeira training before the movie that you know of?
I don't know. Okay. I would assume, because Mestre Main was in it and he was training, I believe, Mark Dacascos, I would assume he was teaching kind of everybody to pick up enough to look like, beginning students
Yeah.
of Capoeira to some extent.
Nice.
I really haven't dug into what they did for movie prep for it with all of the actors. I've seen a lot more like other movies,
Yeah.
More contemporary, people, capoeiristas that will go be stand-ins or stunt doubles in certain movies that want capoeira acrobatics in them, but not really sure what the actors for Only This Strong.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get Mestre Amin on the show. I've put a request out and haven't heard back yet, but he'd be fun to chat
I'll bump
with him.
it to him. I'll let him know.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think his assistant responded back and said she'd ask him. I'm hoping, because he'd be fun to ask questions about that movie being made and stuff too. So
absolutely, yeah,
kind of cool.
There's a fun YouTube video of him actually going through some of the most popular like pop culture references to capoeira over the last 10 or 20 years.
Really?
And how realistic they are.
Okay.
And they even threw like a clip of Bob's Burgers in there for him. It's just like, he's like, yeah, I don't know.
That's funny.
So it's a good video.
I'll have to find that one. That's cool.
Yep.
And I know you mentioned in the email that you've never really trained in any other martial arts. I think you said you took like one kickboxing or Muay Thai class and that was it?
Yeah. So I went and took a Muay Thai class because one of my capoeira instructors had come from Muay Thai.
Okay.
And so I worked with him after hours to like learn more the Muay Thai style kick, like hip drive into like my martellos, which is like the roundhouse kick, and just kind of get a feel for that, and went and took an official class thereafter. And to this day, I kick myself. I'd never gotten into it, and I've always wanted to. And now I struggle with I'm 40 and brittle. Like if I get punched in the face now, is it going to hurt a lot more than in my 20s? Yes. Am I going to recover as fast? No. Is it worth it? Because that's one thing I feel like capoeira does have hand strikes. It does have grappling, but those things are, depending on the school that you're going to train with, either not emphasized at all, or they really are. Like you can learn very different styles of capoeira, but in general, across the world, I feel like capoeira has shifted more towards like a soft spar, more acrobatic, dancey feel, which I actually really enjoy as I'm aging, rather than like the anything can go and we're going to knee you in the face and kick you. And like which is what it was in my 20s when I was training. So I feel like I just didn't get, even though there are hand strikes, we don't use them very often until the game gets ramped up to that point. Like anything can go. Like if you want to ramp it up and start actually landing contact and hand strikes and everything, you can. And the other person can. And now it's up to whoever's in charge of that audit to decide, can the students handle themselves as they are upping the, upping the ante here against each other. And when does somebody stop in to stop them? That being said, it doesn't happen often. It's mostly kicks and takedowns that we're going to use and that are used regularly for contact. And that's where I feel like I just didn't get that, like enough of that, other than some like light shadow boxing style and like open hand strikes. Yeah. I feel like I didn't get the upper body because capoeira doesn't really emphasize that.
Okay. And the other question I had, because I know they did a little bit with it in the movie, but does capoeira do weapons? Do you have any weapons training and stuff that you do?
That's a hard question. I would say officially no, at least for me in my school. They do other cultural dance like stick fighting dances, but that's not really weapons training. And it used to be like, there's things where they would have razor blades in their toes when they played. They would have a knife on the side. You have to understand that capoeira really came first. I mean, it came from slaves, and as slavery ended in Brazil in 1888, like the last country to outlaw from the Portuguese slave trade, capoeira was then made illegal because, it's associated with Black people, and that's not what they want. And so they're not going to give them jobs. They're not going to give them opportunities. So they were still being oppressed in a way. Wow. And so capoeira did get kind of pushed to be a street sport and like associated with gangs and associated with like this kind of underground in Brazil for a long time, whether or not that was a fair association. And so that's where maybe, like a lot of capoeiristas I talk to that come from Brazil, it's like, you carry something with you. You never know what's going to happen. There's no rules in capoeira. And that's why people have nicknames. So they don't have to give real names to police ever. Nobody knows their real name. Everybody knows him as, like for me, like Azul. Nobody knows my real name. And so they can't pin me down. I can just get away with whatever. And that's just kind of how it developed until the 1930s. A mestre brought in, his name was Mestre Bimba, brought in a lot of upright kicks from other martial arts, some grappling, And also like uniforms and structure and capoeira schools with rules. You can't drink in uniform. You can't do X, Y, and Z. And got the president of Brazil to sign off on capoeira being legal and eventually being, the national sport of Brazil, basically. So It came a long way, but it has that that underlying, this really did come from an oppressed people, and it's important that remains in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
So the weapons have not really stayed. It's more of like a myth side. And you may see some people that try to maintain, like, here's how weapons would have been used, here's how they were used, but it's not, you won't find weapons in any capoeira school that you go to. Okay.
So is there, in all your years of martial arts, is there one philosophy that you've learned that's at the top of your list?
That is a hard question. I don't know about philosophy, but maybe that learning to control your emotions in heightened situations. I think that anybody new to martial arts, that's very hard for them to get kicked and not get offended or pissed off, or because it's just this flood of the adrenaline and everything else going on. They don't really understand. Learning how to accept and control that through martial arts, to just appreciate it, can be kind of a life lesson that you can extend a long way. Knowing that you can walk away from fights because you understand what they entail, I think, is another one. I know what that's like to get in a physical confrontation. Even if I win, it doesn't feel good when that has to happen. Yeah. And that's not something I want, and therefore can avoid confidently.
Nice.
If that makes sense, would be another one.
Makes perfect sense. All right. What are your thoughts on then something like MMA and the UFC? And is that something you're a fan of?
Dude, yeah, it's awesome. I do. See, this is like the alternate universe. Like, a part of me wishes I could go back to my 20s and get into martial arts and go actually compete. I think everybody kind of does that. So I appreciate so much the few capoeiristas that have come through the UFC and using what everybody's seen as energy wasting movements and all this, ridiculous, but they're winning, or they're entertaining in the least, and they're representing their culture, and they're just going fucking crazy. And how is that not awesome to see? Yeah, I love seeing that part of it. Because I love well-executed fighting. I love seeing really clean takedowns and knockouts and that kind of representation. I actually like it. I definitely think that's not for the faint of heart, and worry about the long-term damage physically that they're enduring in bringing us that kind of an entertainment. But it's definitely entertaining.
Nice. Do you have a favorite fighter?
No, I don't.
Just good. You just like a good fight.
Yeah. Okay. Well, honestly, most of the Brazilians that came out and just kind of go nuts with their capoeira, that to me is most entertaining. But I haven't, outside of that, really looked into it. Like, ones that just get into grappling, I've never gotten into jiu-jitsu. So fighters that becomes like their MO, it's okay to watch. But strikers and chaotic strikers, like, what's his name? Michel Pereira.
Okay.
He is just like, for me, seeing him just like jump off the fence and kick people in the head and stuff like that's, I loved Street Fighter growing up and wanted to do Chun-Li's little upside down like leg kicks. I don't know if you played Street Fighter.
Oh yeah.
But like, as a 10-year-old, I didn't know martial arts, but I was like, this is cool. I wish I could do what she's doing. Awesome. So there's definitely a spirit of that deep down.
Cool. All right. I got a few fun questions we use to wrap up the show. We're just talking about the UFC. So let's say you could go back 20 years and step into that cage, or even just do it now. What would your walk-up music be? What songs playing as you're walking into the octagon?
Oh, man. Probably something by Polyphia.
Yeah.
Kind of my current favorite band.
Okay.
So
cool.
Not a capoeira song, I know.
Okay. That's okay. Hey, I've had some weird answers for this one. So
it's definitely a rocker, a heavy metal song.
Yeah. Mine would be You're the Best from Karate Kid.
Around.
Yeah, right. I love it. Nice.
It's so classic.
It is good. All right. In your 20-year martial arts career, worst martial arts related injury?
Oh, man. Probably I got kneed in the face. I don't know if it broke my nose, but it felt like it did. And I just kind of nursed it for a while. That, or getting kicked in the solar plexus with like a snap kick. Those were definitely the worst. Wasn't hospitalized for either.
Yeah. That's impressive. I mean, especially for some of the techniques you guys do, that you haven't like broken anything or anything bad.
Honestly, yeah. It's ironic because I went to teach parkour for a little while in LA, and I actually rolled both ankles in the span of a year doing parkour.
Nice.
After like 15 years of not hurting myself in capoeira and tricking. And I was like, what? This parkour is for the birds, man. I'm out of here. So my joints can't take this.
My son wants to get into parkour. He goes to college out in Salt Lake City, and he wants to get into that.
Yeah, yep. It's great until you're about 24. And then you start breaking.
He's 20, so maybe he can do it for a few years at least.
Couple of years to enjoy that one.
I mean, you see some of these guys in their 30s still doing it, and it's like, that's insane. I don't know.
It is, yeah.
I mean, I'm 50. I'm not going to get into parkour anytime soon. So,
yep.
All right. Who are 3, 4, 5 names you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
Oh my goodness. Man, they're just going to be obscure capoeiristas, if that's
okay.
what you want.
I've had many of my guest list people I've never heard of. So.
Okay. You've got Mestra Gata Brava. She's a girl from Philadelphia, Capoeira Mestre, American born. She's a mentor idol. She's like the first woman that I saw just doing crazy, all the moves that guys are doing that no other woman is doing, and kind of opened my mind to maybe I can do those things. You know, I met her 5 years into my training, and that really inspired me to be like, no, I can do everything that everybody else is doing, and I'm going to. So she's one for sure. Man, there's a lot of really good capoeiristas I appreciate. And it's honestly former instructors, more than like an idol from like Bruce Lee or anything like that. Like it's people that affected me in my capoeira journey, I think. So I would put her.
Those are important.
They really are. I would put Mestre Main up there for everything that he's done for capoeira in the U.S., and continually building it and keeping it alive, especially as it just feels like a small sport that gets overlooked so often. So yeah, Mestre Jamaica was one of my first teachers. He's out in Salt Lake City. He's tough as nails. So I'll put him up there with the best.
I should tell my son to look him up.
Yep. Yeah, he's who I trained with for a long time. He knows his shit. It's a very good capoeirista. Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of a good list. I like it. All right, how about a favorite martial arts book?
It's just listening to the Book of Five Rings.
Nice.
It's always enjoyable. Otherwise, a capoeira book, maybe from Mestre Cordion or Nestor Capoeira. They've both written 2 or 3 really classic books about capoeira, what it means to them. And one quote that struck out most from these books was they talked about the need in adulthood for an outlet for that play aggression. As kids, you get a roughhouse and tackle and play and kind of be aggressive. And it doesn't mean much. You're not going to hurt each other, and you're expected to play. And when you get older, society moves away from that, and there's really no outlet for that same play aggression where you're not out and out aggressive towards another adult that leaves it feeling kind of, you know, uncomfortable angst, but a place that feels a little bit like the schoolyard or a playground where you can mess with each other, where you can still land some kicks and still exchange smiles and hugs after and have a good time. And that's what capoeira is to them and is for me. I thought that was really cool to hear them encourage adults to still, you know, have a little bit of aggressive play in their adult lives.
Nice. So is there a capoeira book you'd recommend to someone who's never studied capoeira, who wants to maybe read to learn about it, maybe about a little about the history, a little about the style, and you know, something like that?
Any book from Mestre Cordion is going to be great.
Okay.
Our fellow podcast host, Evan Wedsworth or Vadal, wrote the Little Capoeira Guidebook. That's on Amazon for $10 and just gives a really nice, succinct background on what capoeira is, where it started and why, and the different styles and aspects of capoeira that are really important to it to this day. Because you'll find, I feel like a lot of people, there's just so many misconceptions about capoeira that I hope that get cleared up, you know, and people can appreciate it, not just for instead of taking snippets like, oh, here are these cool moves that we're going to take into our own sport, like tricking, or, hey, it's all about mobility these days. And wow, capoeira, here's our Ito Portal version of capoeira. Like I see so many of that. Oh, they're just doing capoeira, but they're labeling it mobility workout and going, you know, instead of just learning and appreciating what it is. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to find and let you know what it is, but I have somewhere in a box, I have from 30 years ago, a VHS instructional video on capoeira. I don't even remember where I got it or why. I must have got it like at a tournament. They must have had a table set up and were selling them cheap. So I picked one up, but
you've watched it?
I'm sure I probably watched it way back
There's one of those made, I think, by Mestre Bahau, who is a Ashe capoeira back from like the 80s, where he would do a kick and then would explode. Like they put in these like effects.
Oh, really?
He would do a kick and then like the screen screen would explode because it was such a good kick. And then they do it again, like so old school.
I don't remember that, but I'll have to try to find it because I still have a working VCR somewhere. I know that. So I'll have to try to find that video. All right. How about, I know you talked about you're playing video games. So favorite martial arts video game?
Dude, I know everybody's going to say Tekken because that's Capoeira, but it's got to be Street Fighter 2.
Nice.
It's what I was raised on. Chun-Li's my bro.
See, and I usually pick Tekken actually myself, but usually it's Tekken, it's Street Fighter, it's Mortal Kombat. Those are the three biggest ones that get picked, obviously.
I played a lot of Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. I didn't play as much Tekken, but the moves are legit in that. I actually had a friend start Capoeira by just doing the moves over and over and watching it and figuring them out from the video game. And actually legit learned like a few moves that way before he went and found a teacher.
That's kind of cool.
So, yeah.
I wonder who, that's one thing I don't know about Tekken. I wonder who they based the moves off of.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Lateef Crowder.
Okay.
He does a lot in Hollywood when it comes to anybody that needs any kind of Capoeira stunt work or like body simulation or anything like that.
It's cool.
Don't quote me on it, but it could be him.
That's okay. All right. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
I got nothing.
Really?
I recently enjoyed the first season of Cobra Kai, if that counts.
Oh, heck yeah. That's
so
that's
great.
mine.
Johnny's the best. It kind of got OC teen drama in like seasons 3, 4, 5, so I kind of petered out of it, but it was great.
Oh, it's so good. And I'm so sad it's the final season, but
I
love it. I mean, that's the reason I got started was Karate Kid. So it's for me, it was, when I first heard about it, I'm like, oh, they're going to ruin this. And then when it came out, I'm like, all right, I'm going to watch one episode, then tell everyone how bad it is. And it was like 4 hours later, and I just finished season 1. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I think everybody binged season 1. It was pretty classic.
Yeah, they did a great job with it. They really did.
They did.
So, yeah. It really sucks. So I think if it wasn't for COVID, we probably would have got 2 more seasons out of it. It's just all the kids aged out of it, unfortunately.
Did you see an influx after Cobra Kai came out of people coming back, kind of like they did with Karate Kid, coming back to martial arts in this day and age?
I've talked to a lot of instructors, and I don't think that a lot of them have seen. So the 3 big booms that I've heard, well, 4. The 4 big booms I've heard of were Enter the Dragon. That caused a major one in the 70s. Karate Kid in the 80s. But then Karate Kid kind of kept it going because it was Karate Kid. And then you started Van Damme and Seagal and all those movies all the way through the late 80s to early 90s into like Only the Strong, Perfect Weapon. Then you had suddenly Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles. So that when Karate Kid started, it was like it was like a 10-year span where it was really booming. Yeah. And then the next one would have been when the UFC really hit big, because like UFC started, but it really didn't hit big for about 10 years later.
Do you feel like, if you don't mind me asking 2 questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
1, who is your favorite Ninja Turtle? It's an important question.
Yeah, it's tough because I've actually interviewed a few of them. So,
that's so cool.
I feel like I kind of feel like I gotta say Donatello.
Oh, all right, yeah. I like it. See, I think as an adult, I need to watch it again because maybe I would reevaluate. I always liked Raphael growing up.
Yeah, I liked them all, but I mean, I've interviewed Steven, who was Donatello, and sent me an autograph picture for my daughter because she was a Ninja Turtles fan. So,
nice.
I'd say Donatello.
My other quick question, maybe you've said this a lot, but how do you feel about UFC, and do you think it has helped the martial art community, or do you think it's pigeonholing them into only training 2 styles or whatever everybody sees as the most efficient and just kick ass instead of all the other things you can learn from martial arts?
To me, it's 50-50. It really is. Because has it helped martial arts? Yes, it has. Because a lot of people have gotten into it because of USC. A lot of people have gotten in for the wrong reasons, unfortunately. I judged pro MMA for over a decade. Even like me, I trained at a traditional Taekwondo school, and so many people would come in, I want to learn MMA. And it's like, oh, not quite what we do here. And actually that changed. Our traditional Taekwondo school was as far as I know, the first traditional martial arts school in our area to add in grappling back in the 90s. After like the first 1 or 2 UFCs, my instructor started adding in grappling. So we were doing that before there was way before any grappling schools in the area. So, on the flip side, you see, like when it first started, a lot of the guys who were fighting had a traditional martial arts background. A lot of them started in a traditional art and then went into the UFC and started cross training. Whereas now there's this whole generation of people who are just learning MMA. So they're not learning the traditional part of it. They're not learning it as an art. They're just learning as a fight sport.
Yeah,
so,
which can be great. And I do wonder, though, if they are lacking in all the things that, to me, longevity-wise, really matter. You know, the mindset that martial arts teaches you, the understanding of respect and community and what that really means and what is your place within that. And if they are able to develop that in MMA, which is just like, how hard can you kick everybody's ass to win?
Yeah. One thing I noticed, like when I started judging MMA back in 2000, 2001, I think it was, whatever, half, if not 75% of the people who walked into the octagon would bow.
Yeah.
And by the time I stopped judging, 15 years later, maybe one per event. So it's
and half the time they're slapping away the fist or they're just being tough guys.
Yeah, so
I don't see the bowing very often.
That part changed, and even in the UFC, you still see it, but it's definitely not very often. And like I said, it's the difference between being a martial artist and being an athlete. And there's nothing wrong with either. If that's what they want out of it, that's fine. But I don't like, people who only train in MMA. I mean, yes, MMA is a martial art, but I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it doesn't really have that art part to it. Where who did I talk to? Someone I talked to that trained at an MMA gym, and they actually taught patterns and forms. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
Which was kind of cool.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe MMA is kind of akin to other martial arts, what capoeira competitions are to capoeira. Yes, you're learning the most efficient strikes and takedowns and showing how you can execute physically, but where's the soul behind all of that and like the purpose behind all of that? So it's fun as a sport, but I think it's important to remember where it came from.
Like locally here, so I live across the river from Fargo, North Dakota, and we have one actual MMA school in town. And the instructor has been training in jiu-jitsu, BJJ, for decades, and black belt in BJJ, and also it has BJJ classes out of the MMA school. So there is still people that are still learning the art of BJJ and still do just BJJ competitions, not just. And they also have a kickboxing instructor. And I know when they first started, they had a kickboxing instructor that went and trained in Thailand for like a while and stuff. And so but I don't know if that's the norm, or if that's a one-off. I'm not sure about that. I haven't visited enough MMA schools to know that, but
yeah.
All right.
Interesting perspective.
This one I think you'll have an answer for, because I think you might have mentioned it already, but a favorite martial arts movie.
Dude. Yeah, I'm not going to say Only the Strong, because that's kind of too easy, right? Yep. Genuinely, it has to be Ip Man. That movie just moved me. And see this, there it is again. Like, I still have wanted to do Wing Chun. Yeah. I've not found like a school close or like the time to do it when I'm already teaching still my own martial art. But that Muay Thai, On Bak was the other mention. On Bak and Ip Man are like my two favorites. And the two martial arts I want to try are Muay Thai and Wing Chun. So
Donnie Yen was so good in it, man.
It was very moving. It was awesome.
And they just announced like a month ago, he's starring in a big screen. Technically, it's not a remake because it's a movie based on a TV show, but they're doing a big screen movie version of the 70s TV series Kung Fu, starring Donnie Yen.
Oh, wow.
And like, awesome. They did the TV show remake a couple years ago and it wasn't good. But with Donnie Yen, I'm excited for it.
Yeah, for sure. That's going to be great. And
if you like Wing Chun, you have to check out someone I just interviewed. Their episode comes out. Actually, it comes out tomorrow, I believe, on my show. But a gentleman named Eric Oram. Just released a new book on Wing Chun, and he's kind of the Wing Chun guy to the stars. He's like Robert Downey Jr.'s personal instructor. He's trained Robert Downey Jr. for over 20 years. Did the fight choreography in the Sherlock Holmes movies and stuff like that. And
awesome.
Great interview. Very, very. He trained directly with William Chung, who was Bruce Lee's primary instructor under Ip Man. So,
nice. Yeah. That just may push me over the edge. I got to find a school.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Final martial arts question. Doesn't have to be a martial arts movie, I guess, but any movie you've ever seen, favorite movie fight scene?
Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like there's so many. Well, that's not true. There's some not well done ones that I've seen, but I don't know. Honestly, I'm always really impressed. It's kind of left field and a little cliche, maybe because it's so popular, but some of Jackie Chan's personal stunts that he's done when they are like long shots, like 3 minutes long setups of like this crazy, he's jumping through ladders and then kicking somebody's butt and then going here. Like just executing a stunt flawlessly for 3 minutes like that to get it on film is pretty sick.
Yeah.
I always enjoy seeing what he does.
I know many of my guests that we've chatted about the chase scene in Ong Bak that was all filmed in one take.
Yes,
he's like jumping over cars and stuff.
Yes.
I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, that one's amazing in that movie. And in Ip Man's, when he first throws down, he brings back like a sack of potatoes or something, throws it down and fights one guy and then fights 3 more and just fucks everybody up. It's just like when the movie really starts. That's a great scene.
That's why I love this question, because I've had so many. I mean, I've had people pick like the sword fight scene in Princess Bride. People have picked ones from Star Wars. Obviously, like the final fight in Karate Kid has been picked. Rocky has been picked.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is the Bourne Identity with Matt Damon, when the scene when he's sleeping on the park bench and the cops wake him up. It's like this 10-second fight scene when he takes out both cops. It's just so cool. So
that is pretty sweet.
A lot of good ones.
You don't like the Protector, the water scene with Capoeira?
Oh, that one's good.
Also great.
A lot of good ones. Well, before I let you go, is there anything I forgot to ask you or you want to be sure we get out there?
No, just to encourage people, if they are curious about Capoeira, to have an open mind and see it for the whole art that it is. People misunderstand it as, oh, it's not an efficient martial art, therefore it's worthless, when it's like, that's not even what they're going for.
Yeah.
You know, they're here to train together and share together as a community and play and kick each other, take each other down, and sing songs about what they did to get to where they are today. And that's kind of the point of it. So I appreciate you being open-minded and having me on.
Oh yeah. I've been a fan, like I said, I've been a fan of Capoeira since I saw the movie, and I've never seen it live. I've never seen the art. I was amazing. Supposed to about 12 years ago, me and my instructor and another gentleman put on a 2-day weekend all martial arts seminar where we invited instructors from all over different styles, where people could pay like $20 and come for the whole weekend and learn different styles. And we had, Shaolin Kempo, we had, kickboxing, we had MMA, we had, Taekwondo, we had Aikido, and we were supposed to have a Capoeira instructor from down in Minneapolis. And at the last minute, he had a family thing come up and he had to cancel. And that was the one I was looking forward to the whole weekend.
Well, let me know next time. I will be there. Spread
definitely.
The Capoeira spirit.
We should do it again. I should talk to my instructor.
Capoeira live is so different too. The kind of energy and vibe that a good Hada can have, because anything can go.
Yeah.
And it can go from like a playful nothing to holy crap, they're throwing everything at each other, and like you're just kind of biting your nails watching everything happen, and it's just awesome.
I'll tell you, if you have anyone who wants to move up to this area and open a school, I'll help them promote it. I'll maybe talk to my instructor, see if they can do a demonstration at our yearly tournament or something. I mean, it'd be a lot of fun. And also I will put links out for whatever you need me to, for the podcast, for your YouTube channel. Just send me any links you want.
Thank you.
It'll be. So I think people are going to enjoy this, because a lot, like you said, it's a very misunderstood. A lot of people don't. And like I said, I've been a fan of it for a long time. So I've really wanted to do this for a long time and stuff. And I'm glad we made this happen. And your episode will be out October 17th. So just about a month away.
All righty.
But I'm looking forward to it. And I think the listeners are going to love it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's awesome.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.